This is Flowers on the Stage.
Love is the universal constant, and everything's going to be okay. And creativity can't be usurped.
What do you mean by usurped?
Usurp, take a position of power or importance, literally by force.
So creativity can't be taken.
Yeah, it's prominence, it's importance, it's primacy in life, and as a guiding force in the world. I think of AI. I don't
Mm.
say that human creativity can't be usurped, but creativity itself. That's what I hope to believe.
Like ingenuity is just this ever pervading force kind of thing. Am I understanding that properly?
Yeah, it's sort of the first cause. It's creativity. You know,
Mm.
and then there was, before anything, there was just an infinity of nothing, and then something decided to exist or existed or created, and ever since then it's been a cascading force of that, and it comes from a place of love, and that's where it returns. That's what I hope to believe.
Mm. So thinking back, here you are now in 2024, but looking back at when you were younger, can you talk to me about some changes that you look back on in the way you approach life, in the way you approach, everything or anything that you think's had the biggest positive impact?
I thought I could get away with not engaging in one of the most crucial aspects to a successful, happy, and positive life, which is hard work, discipline.
Mm.
I was always looking for a way around it, a shortcut. I sort of ascribed that kind of approach to life to be a linear approach, and I was looking for a more exponential growth pattern. Um, and I've likened it to making a lasagna. You can put all the layers together, but until you put that bitch in the oven, it's not going to be something you want to serve to people.
What hard work are you referring to? Like hard work on what?
Doing things that you don't want to do that are going to, my personal trainer says, you're doing this for future you.
Mm.
And I would, I got into Ram Dass and spirituality and appreciating the present moment early on. And I think my ego was adept at hijacking that to tell myself, whatever that means, that I didn't need to worry about that. Just be in the present moment. And that worked for what it was, but it's not something that I sparkle with these days.
That you sparkle with these days. That's a high level phrase.
That's from South Park.
So other than work ethic, I'd love to hear what kind of personality traits that you most admire in people you work with.
Well, a lot of the personality traits that I value most are ones that I find lacking in myself. Um, Being grounded, being realistic, hoping for the best but expecting the worst, maybe. Yeah, diligence, that's the working card. Um, Humility, deep sense of humility. Loyalty.
I love how you just rattled all of those off. That's not necessarily how I picture that question going.
How'd you picture it going?
There's usually an anecdote there. That's my favorite question, I think, to ask.
Cool.
Yeah. That's interesting, though, how then you got into things like loyalty, but you say things that you think you're lacking. Care
Uh,
to linger or maybe clarify that?
sure, I've approached life for better or for worse, with earnesty and authenticity as sort of a game. And one way to unfold life is to experiment and try different things out and to learn from approaches, which has served me well, but has hurt others along the way throughout the process. And I've been adept at placing myself and others as sort of the subjects of an experiment rather than friends to be loyal to no matter what. And that's sort of in a service of what I believed at the time was a higher purpose was experimentation, exploration, the Miss Frizzle approach, as I'll often bring up, get messy, make mistakes. I've made some mistakes. And in doing so, I've learned throughout my experiments that experimentation is something you don't want to take lightly.
I think it'd be cool next to talk about, something we were chatting about. The quantum theory of gravity, something you mentioned to me in air quotes. I'd love to hear you explain what that means to you for me and anyone out there listening.
What it means to me, when I was in school, there were a couple classes that I enjoyed, got a lot out of. I only went to school for 2 years. I got 3 semesters worth of credits. Philosophy of science, philosophy 250. I learned about Karl Popper's falsification theory, and then Thomas Kuhn. And those were very informative to my young budding mind. Karl Popper's falsification idea is that science progresses with by showing what is not true, by proving things wrong. Experiments are this is not how things work, and you falsify ideas and you get ever closer to the truth in sort of a fractalized manner where you zoom in further and further. But his theory was that you can never actually arrive at the truth. You only can be aware of what you're wrong about and get a little bit closer, kind of zoom in on this fractal, but it goes on forever. Thomas Kuhn talked about paradigms and how that would work sort of on a societal level, where you'd have a group of scientists that would create a paradigm about, gravity, Newton's gravity, and it would come about, it would constantly be proven or talked about, and then over time it would be chipped away at by new scientists until one day the younger generation would realize that that is no longer relevant, but the older generation would hold on to that, and eventually there would be a shift away from that paradigm to a new paradigm. So going with Newton's gravity, it's a little different because that jumped forward with Einstein, where after his theory of special relativity, which was related to the idea that light is the speed of light is constant. We don't need to get too deep into that. He looked into general relativity, which is it's just another way of conceiving of what gravity is. Einstein or Newton said this is gravity. There's a thing that attracts objects on an apple falling from a tree. It's the same as the moon orbiting Earth, continually falling. And he described a mathematical model of how that works. And Einstein uncovered a newer, more correct model that shows that Newton's idea of gravity breaks down as you approach high velocities, high acceleration, or high mass. So close to a black hole, beginning of the universe, things of that sort. Cut a long story short, it is a long story. Einstein updated the theory of gravity to something that's more accurate. Newton's model is a model and works well for everything you'd see day to day. Einstein is necessary when you start plotting out satellites and looking at stars off in the distance and such and such. And then, actually, interestingly enough, Einstein was also the progenitor of quantum theory, which buzzword you've heard about, secret, this and that. He actually didn't win the Nobel Prize for E equals MC squared or special relativity. He won it for discovering the photoelectric effect, identifying it. I'm not exactly sure. Where if you shine a light on metal, you excite electrons off of that metal, proving that light is composed of photons, which are particles. At the same time, light is known to be a wave. It operates as a wave. These two competing ideas of light have kind of stumped scientists for a while. Einstein came down on one side. His quote, "God does not play dice," factors into that. I don't know if you heard of the double slit experiment.
Yes.
That's the
That
concept that each individual particle is a wave in a superposition with it itself. So it's not that light is ripples on a pond, it's that each individual photon is ripples. And until you observe it, then it becomes in one place or the other. So light isn't a wave or a particle, the particle itself is a wave. Okay. So again, to cut a long story short, when you do take general relativity and quantum mechanics, this is where I should have brought in the black hole and um, the Big Bang. When you have quantum mechanics describes things that are very small, and general relativity describes things that are very massive. When you have those existing in the same realm, such as in a black hole and in the Big Bang, we don't know what happens. There's a shield, a cloak behind those, because what general relativity predicts and what quantum mechanics predicts is gibberish. They disagree with each other to negative infinities of sorts, dividing by zero. And both are extremely accurate in their own realms, but both are wrong. The quantum theory of gravity is where you've united both of those ideas, and you've explained gravity and you've explained quantum mechanics in one cohesive theory. One of these, I guess, one of the top contending theories is more of a mathematical construction known as string theory, and it can describe those, and it's been investigated in various ways, but they haven't found a way to experimentally test it yet. So it's not really a scientific theory, it's more of a mathematical solution.
This is Flowers on the Stage, a podcast about being creative and finding success. To support it, please check out our sponsors, New Belgium Brewing, Thrax CBD, and Ticket Relief, the ticketing company that plants trees with a portion of each ticket sold. And now, back to the episode.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. And my first, though, is briefly, are you able to kind of explain or define string theory?
From my understanding of it, at its core, the universe is made up of tiny vibrating strings, not tiny particles, and they vibrate in 7 or 11 dimensional space. I think it might be 7 more dimensions than our normal 4, 3 spatial and 1 time. As you get very much smaller, there are other dimensions that occur. Our 3 spatial dimensions are essentially infinite, and time is linear. The other 7 are, when you get very small, instead of being a pinpoint of a particle, it's actually a string jumping around between 7 other different dimensions. So one way to conceive of higher dimensional space, it's very difficult. I haven't really figured out a good way, but you imagine you're on a sheet of paper. 3-dimensional world is on flatland, 2-dimensional surface. As you add sheets of paper to the book, you add a 3rd dimension. So our 3 dimensions, imagine it as 2. When you zoom in, there's tiny little pages in 7 different directions off of that single page.
Almost like Osmosis Jones inside of a particle of blood, or like a blood cell, for example, and there's a whole room in there.
Yeah, it's hard to really conceive of. Richard Feynman had said it best, that if you think you understand quantum mechanics, then you don't.
So my next question is very interesting theories. And, I not asking you this, but then why are they interesting? They're interesting. They pertain to basically everything that's going on, how we got here, and what this all is. My question for you is, like, what about theories like this interest you, and what is the meaning of its kind of application to your life?
I've always been interested in why. I actually had an argument with, not an argument, a friendly philosophical discussion with Owen Murphy, the other half of Schwa. So Owen was interested in how things work, how to do things. I've always been interested in why things occur. Why? Just why? That's my ultimate question. A kid's like, Mom, why is this? Dad, why? I've always looked for that answer. I've looked for why all the way through, and it's led me deep into the annals of human understanding, I suppose. And the reason I think why is important is because humans are motivated to do certain things. I think how is interesting if you want to do things on your own, just figure out Owen's an electrical engineer. He's working on quantum computing right now with his company. He was doing lasers before. He's interested in how do you do something? How do you create this? I think the why question illuminates a deeper nature to how, and it's sort of the precursor. It's the foundational aspect of how. And furthermore, with why, you can motivate people and guide and lead people much more effectively than you could ever do with how. You can say, this is how you do this. You tell someone this is why you do this, and then explain the how or let them figure out how. They're going to carry that with them a lot more. When I was walking around college, dabbling in psychedelics, playing a little bit of music, but not really deep into anything, I thought, well, what's the ultimate instrument? And it's humans, it's the human species. And in order to learn how to work with that artistic medium, I think why is the crucial avenue to explore.
Have you gotten closer to understanding why?
In the sense that you can zoom in on a fractal. I've seen the shape of why in ever new arenas and with new permutations, and I have all of the history of how I've seen it before to layer on top of how I see it now. So I just have more data, I suppose, and more understanding of where that comes from, I suppose.
Does any specific moment in your past come to mind as something that's challenged your conception of how the world works? Like, is there a specific moment?
Well, I'd like where you went with it, but the first one that came to my mind is the one I'll bring up. There's a couple moments at festivals. One was at Workout one year. The other was at Catskill Chill 2014. I think they were on the same year. The Workout was at Legend Valley, where there was supposed to be this ridiculous storm coming in. Just like, remember Catskill Chill? They announced over the loudspeaker, everyone take down your easy ups, take shelter. It's going to be like extreme weather event. I went to Consider the Source at the main stage before all that was going down. And I kid you not, they shredded so hard. It was the funkiest set I've ever seen them play, that as they watched the radar, the storm broke and they shredded the atmosphere, and it went around and hit all the surrounding areas. It did not hit the festival. Same thing happened at Workout. Same thing happened at summer camp. It was all within a short period of time. That changed my conception of what intention is and what is real and how real things are. Is there, multi-dimensional quantum paths that we can choose, that we as a group in the reality that experienced the storm shredding around us were able to stay positive and happy and bring this energy that caused us to traverse in a reality that didn't occur? Or was it just the heat of the bodies that changed the atmosphere above that caused it in a much more empirical, rational sense? Buckminster Fuller, it's not exactly analogous, but he described any sufficiently advanced technology as indistinguishable from magic. And I think technology or understanding can be interchanged. Any sufficiently advanced form of scientific understanding is indistinguishable from magic. And that taught me that magic can be real, just not yet explained in a rational sense.
How would you explain intention and magic to someone who's maybe like 6 or 7?
I would tell them that your thoughts have power. And if you think in a good way, good things will happen. If you think in a bad way, bad things will happen.
I love it. Jumping a little bit to the side, I want to talk to you about team dynamics. You with Pigeons, like being on the road for so long, enduring the ups and downs and like having longevity through it is I mean, it's rare to see a group of people stick together through all the chaotic adversity of van breakdowns and, you know, all the ups and downs, COVID happening, and then, the rock star high, and then the kind of come down after the big show and all that. And my question for you is, what have you learned are the central components of having great team dynamics, and specifically with Pigeons, like, what do you think you all have done right with how you treat each other and how you've handled the tough times to have this longevity?
I think each of us would answer that question very differently. But seeing as I'm the one who's answering it, throughout my life, I've felt thoughts and understandings and how I conceive of things come as full on images. And the one that came for this earlier on, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know when it first came about, when I started noticing that, is that a team dynamic is like an elastic sheet, and you stretch it to cover more area, shade, protection, whatever it might be. If one aspect of that sheet pulls too hard, you're going to rip the whole sheet. And the others hold it in place. So they kind of are holding it down, but you're really keeping it together. And as you grow bigger and bigger, you learn how to be more stretchy, but you also learn how to come back, and you continue that growth outward. And you just hope you don't rip the sheet, because then you
That's
lose.
so fascinating. I absolutely love that visualization. Wow. That brings that rings so true. Did you come up with that?
It came to me. I don't know if
there you go.
some part of my
Cam,
brain.
I didn't come up with it. It came to me.
Well, it's that's the age-old question of the artist: are you an antenna, or are you a, whatever? Where's creativity? Is that latent? Is it inherent? Which is why I believe creativity can be harnessed by AI, because I don't think it's something that humans create. I think it's something we tune into.
What would you say has been the thing in your life that's been your greatest teacher?
My wife. The main thing is, even as I'm talking, just like, oh, this is so deep, this is so blah blah blah. She's like, shut the fuck up. Like,
1,000%.
take yourself too seriously here. You don't take yourself seriously enough. You're too in the clouds here. You're too out of whack here. I know she loves me and I love her. And so she's kind of one person who can call me on my bullshit, and take me out of that egoic, like, feeling like, oh yeah, I have this cool way of talking and, thinking about stuff. And yeah, I like that. It's like, that's a whole aspect of me that I'm experiencing. It's not who I am. And she's helped me realize that more and more.
I'd love to hear your personal philosophy on parenting, and not in the frame of advice for anyone listening, just what you personally, as Ben, think is going to be the best way for you to be a parent.
I think children, just as in soul, choose their parents, and they come down to teach us lessons and learn the lessons they need for that incarnation. And it's sort of up to us to foster them in that experience and learn what we learn, make sure they don't die, ideally. Just help them grow, be present. Kids seem to be very adept, in my observation, at also finding out the bullshit of their parents. It's like, well, these are the compromises you made in your life that I'm not going to make. You focused too much on money and didn't focus on family. You didn't focus enough on money and our family suffered. I'm going to do things differently. They find I roll my eyes because if I recite this, Cece will be like, oh yeah, this again. The one real poem I've written, at the end, refers to that. I don't need to go find that. It is on my website, but I can recite it.
That's lowenzen.com. .com. Yes. Right down the middle. lowenzen.com.
Yeah. It's God, I'm so tempted to. My ego wants me to recite the whole thing, but
Ben, this is a podcast with your ego. Oh, I'm sorry, Cece. There's a green light. Really
the end of it is what I was referring to, but seems to be that the context can't hurt. Sat down with a leather-bound journal that my grandmother had given me with empty blank pages. I was out of the band at the time, not in a. The canvas had ripped of our foursome. I had ripped the canvas. I was living at home. I'd come down from what I later, only in the past year, understood was a manic episode and had entered into a depressive episode. And I sat down on my parents' front porch where I was living at the time, and I just started writing. Does the written word inject some form of causal meaning? If, by way of searching, the final discovery is all that remains of the ultimate mystery. Far greater minds, in far greater times, have seemingly been similarly inconclusive. But in this moment, every drop that cascades down the infinite waterfall is a representation, a reenactment, a fractal of a story that has been told and has unfolded a trillion times over. It seems it is a matter of perspective. We fling the seeds of our discontent towards every corner, towards hope, towards opportunity, and 1 in a million, perhaps fewer, returns with news of an encroaching dream. I think I skipped some parts, but that was the end of it, was where it comes to fruition in terms of our conversation, that we fling the seeds of our discontent, and one comes back with a news of an encroaching dream. I think I forgot some parts. It's been a while since I've recited.
You want to talk to me about the new album? I'm excited about that.
Yeah, well, it's first album that we haven't named with a P. And of course, once we saw the art for it and we debuted it, everyone's like, Portal. I'm like, damn it, that would have been a good last one because it looks like a portal. But it's all good. Day and time, moving forward. There were other options for our last album, Perspective. I'm glad we ended up with Perspective because it also signals sort of growth rather than, like a more playful one. So I think that's where we're at. And I've always been about authenticity. You do want brand loyalty or branding, and people expect what they expect. But I feel with artistic expression, the most important thing is doing what speaks true to you, not what others expect of you or what has worked. So I think that's where we're at, is we're more comfortable leaning into that these days. This next album reflects that. You have Day and Time, you have All Right Tonight, sort of those are the two, and then Feeling Fine, which are out. Beneath the Surface is a different vibe. Yeah, it's just an exciting signpost on the road of Pigeons to a nice sightseeing stop. It's like a good overlook.
I think that's interesting. You
beautiful
bring up
news.
being true to your expression and then the tug of war with that, and then also being consistent with kind of the brand people expect from you, and that opens up a rabbit hole where it's like, am I making the thing that I think's going to work for the fan, or am I making the thing that I just have to make because I'm just super interested to make this?
And I think it's one example for me, from my viewpoint as a fan, was when Papadozio put out a couple of their albums. I think To End the Illusion of Separation is an amazing album. I love it.
I agree.
Extras in a Movie, sorry. Also an amazing album. My favorite is Microdosio. That thing just goes so hard. But I feel like in my experience, in my reality, my understanding of things, it felt like they were true to themselves, but they strayed too far. And that elastic thing between a team dynamic is the same with your fans and yourself. You want to also honor what they want, your fans want, at the same time what you want. And I think we've been able to slowly progress and tap into all sorts of moving forward, pushing past, debuting new songs, feet on the ground at Cap Theater, that push us in a different direction and let people enjoy that and see what it is while still giving them party fun, some of the PDM vibes, the Pigeons dance music vibes, stuff like Schwanthem, Avalanche. Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance. It's its own form of art. just like set list design, song creation, poetry, artistic expression in general. So there's a lot to factor in.
I'd love to hear from your perspective uniquely. So, yeah, with the only looking through your eyes, how you'd kind of describe in a positive light the other members of Pigeons.
Individually,
Yeah.
Jeremy is incredibly diligent worker, very focused. At the same time, as well as not being focused, he's the kind of guy that always has a guitar in his hands, always playing something. He's always reworking a set list. He's always working on the business aspect of things. He's looking at routings, even though we have people who do that now. He's looking at business ins and outs and trying to make it better. He's passionate about efficiency and songwriting. Seeing him with his daughter is incredible because he's just always laughing at things she'll do. She's at the point where sometimes he'll pick up his guitar at home and she's like, no guitar, because I guess he's so into it. That's one of those things where kids kind of see the deficits of parents. I think he gets so lost in it all the time that she's just like, hey, other things are going on. I think that's a good deficit to have. I think that's a positive thing for him. He's very loyal. He cares about his friends more than he cares about himself. He cares about other people around him. He wants everyone to feel. I wouldn't say he wants everyone to feel a certain way. He wants to do what's best for everyone. I would say it's a more accurate way of putting it. Greg is a natural leader. He is incredibly even-keeled, thoughtful. He doesn't react outwardly. He is very measured in his response to things. He's incredibly funny, incredibly creative, incredibly improvisational. He has a sense of himself, unlike anyone I've ever met. Sort of a firm, foundational experience of life. He has morals and principles out the wazoo. He's never done Adderall throughout all of school. He never took shortcuts in that way. Hard worker, perfectionist in certain ways. Self-described. Incredible father. I've seen him with his kids and other people's kids. He's so goofy, obviously, but he can be serious where he needs to be. Alex is the most humble and talented person I've ever met. His ratio of humility to talent is literally off of any chart that could be charted by man. He's very realistic, very grounded. He's just a phenomenal human being. He just is who he is. He's kind of just steady as she goes. Always working on drums, always trying different things out and pushing his envelope creatively. Yeah, I don't think a day goes by where I'm not like, how am I worthy of playing in a band with him? He's the greatest. He's the best drummer on the scene. Our sound engineer said he saw us live for the first time finally in October, and he said he just doesn't make mistakes. Like, yeah, Gator don't play no shit. And you ask Gator's like, oh, kidding, I blah blah blah, this blah blah, da, da, da. Humble. And that's Jake mentioned on his discussion with you that you're an amalgam of the people you're around the most, and I'm just incredibly fortunate to be around these guys.
I think that it says so much about someone, the shine they're willing, ready, and able to give to other people.
Yeah.
I love that answer. My next question for you: if you had to recommend 3 songs in all of music as a way to get to know you, what 3 songs would you pick?
La Femme d'Argent by Air, Echoes by Pink Floyd, and Waterfall by Jimi Hendrix.
You just had that. You just in the gut.
No, those came quickly to me in this moment, but I do have a three humans I've had for a while. It's Jimi Hendrix, Albert Einstein, and Socrates. Those are my three people that would describe me.
What would you ask Socrates? Or say to him, not necessarily ask
I'd
him.
probably just like
Tickle him?
not like what'd you have for breakfast? I don't just have a conversation. I don't think
Like
there's
eggs.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have
how'd
eggs
you
every
make-
day? You know, I don't know. I don't think there's too much I'd need to glean from him that he hasn't made explicitly clear in my mind. I don't know. He's not like other philosophers. He's sort of the Karl Popper of falsification. You know, his dialectic approach is not here's how things are. It's here's where everything's bullshit.
I get from you a sense of just like a overarching skepticism of things that are taken to the bank, where you really want to kind of look behind the curtain to see if something's true or not. I'm curious what you feel like you do know, because obviously I feel like you talk to Ben here and it's like, okay, this is the kind of guy I say, oh, I know nothing. And I also know everything. And I'm curious, like,
I mean,
what
I
do you
think
actually believe?
certainty is an instant indicator of incorrectness.
Do
So
you have certainty about things? Like, do you feel like you do believe and know a handful of things?
I believe and know that if you believe and know something, you're wrong.
Should I devil's advocate that?
You can try. I've tried.
So
Give it
does
a
2
shot.
+ 2 not equal 4? Like, do I know? I know that I really like chicken with Frank's Red Hot.
Okay. Well, there's a perfect example of how that statement is correct. Thinking that I believe and know everything, what I said is a certainty that is obviously wrong. So that proves its point. I said I am certain that if you know something, you're wrong. You've proven that that is incorrect. Thus, something that I knew for certain is incorrect.
So there's nuance to things.
Yeah, I guess you can't know anything for certain.
What would you say your main principles of, you living a life that you can look back and be proud of, you living your life the way you want to live it? What are those fundamental aspects of that?
Probably fearlessness.
I love it. I know you're going on tour with Mr. Andy Frasco and Dogs in a Pile. Can't wait to see you on Columbus in June, and
Yeah, man.
that'll be a fun one.
Say what's up for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to. And everyone out there listening, keep your eyes peeled for the new Pigeons album, lowenzen.com. And Ben, always a pleasure. I love how your mind works. I feel like you are so uniquely you, and it's just inspiring because it's like there's such a strong pull to be a certain kind of person in the world. And that's different for all of us, but we all have this kind of person we want to be, and there's so many ways to go about that. And sometimes you need to see somebody who doesn't think like, I feel like you think very differently than me, even though we probably agree on many things. And like there's so many different ways to skin the cat, I hate that phrase,
Isn't
but
it a great case? Oh, well, Schrodinger's cat is a fun one. I don't know if you're aware of Schrodinger's cat.
how about you hit me with it as we close this one out?
It's a thought experiment about quantum mechanics. If you have I believe it's a cesium atom or ion that can decay in one way or the other, and it is in a box with a cat, and the cesium ion has a pill of cyanide in its box that if it decays one way, it'll open the box and poison the cat to kill it. If it decays another way, it won't kill the cat. Until you open that box, it could go either way. Quantum mechanics says it's in superposition and it's random which way it goes. So until you open that box, is that cat dead or alive, or is it in superposition of both? Because until you observe it, it hasn't done one or the other. Now, I think the cat is an observer itself, so it would know, and that would collapse it because it's also observing. But it's a fun thought experiment. Schrodinger's cat, also a cool band name.
Ben, you are just so Ben, and I love it so much.
I've been me my whole life.
I've been Ben for a while now.
Been there, done that.